the triggering event. The galaxy was no stranger to conflict. Wars were fought over resources, power, and pride. But even in such a vast, chaotic universe, there were still moments that shook the very foundations of existence. The death of one innocent child would be one such moment. It started on a peaceful, quiet colony on the far edge of the galaxy. The colony was home to a small group of humans who lived simple, quiet lives. They grew crops, raised families, and lived without the weight of the larger galactic politics bearing down on them. It was a place many thought would never be of any importance, a peaceful speck on the map, far from the heart of galactic powers like the Empire. But on that day, everything changed. The Galactic Empire, in its quest for expansion, had long kept its eyes on Earth's colonies. These colonies were often left to fend for themselves, their defenses weak and their resources scarce. But the Empire had no patience for weakness, and the distant human settlements were viewed as obstacles to their greater ambitions. It was a cold, calculated decision that would lead to disaster. The Empire's fleet arrived at the colony without warning. The ships descended from the skies, their massive forms blocking out the sun. They were giants of metal and death, their weapons designed for nothing more than complete and utter destruction. The people of the colony had no idea what was coming. The Empire's forces landed with precision. The troops deployed, their black armor reflecting the light of the distant stars as they marched through the streets, their guns raised high. The humans, unarmed and outmatched, had no chance to resist. In the chaos, a small child, a mere 10 years old, was caught in the middle. Her name was Maya, and she had been playing in the fields when the attack started. The sound of explosions echoed in the distance, and as she turned to run home, she was struck down by a stray blast. Maya's death, while tragic, was not an accident. It was the result of the Empire's ruthless tactics, designed to intimidate and crush any resistance before it could even begin. The soldiers didn't care. To them, the life of one child meant nothing. It was just another casualty in their quest for control. News of her death spread quickly, but it wasn't the tragedy alone that shocked the galaxy. It was the response that followed. Humanity had been underestimated for far too long. Back on Earth, as the first reports reached the home planet, the reaction was swift. Leaders from all over Earth met in secret, their anger building with each new piece of information. How could the Empire so coldly murder an innocent child without so much as a second thought? The more they heard, the more their resolve hardened. The child's death became a symbol for all of humanity. It wasn't just the loss of one life, it was a direct attack on everything Earth stood for. The leaders knew they had to act, but they also knew that any retaliation would have to be nothing short of extraordinary. If they responded in a way that was expected, the Empire would crush them without hesitation. But if they did something unexpected, something so powerful it couldn't be ignored, maybe, just maybe, they could make the Empire think twice. And so, the decision was made. The leaders of Earth began mobilizing their military might, but this would not be a simple counterattack. They wouldn't just send a few ships to retaliate. No, Earth's response would be like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. For the first time, Earth would reveal the true power of its military, a force so mighty that the galaxy would tremble in fear. The planet's dreadnoughts, the largest and most powerful warships ever built by humanity, began to assemble. These ships were the stuff of legends, each one capable of laying waste to entire fleets. But what made them even more terrifying was the fact that the Empire had no idea Earth even possessed them. The Empire had always believed humanity was weak, unprepared for war, and lacking the strength to challenge the galactic powers. They were wrong. As Earth's fleet gathered, rumors began to spread across the galaxy. Whispers of an unthinkable force. The dreadnoughts were more than just warships, they were a symbol of humanity's will and a promise of vengeance for Maya's death. And so, in the shadow of this tragedy, a force unlike any other was born. The Empire had made a grave mistake, and now the galaxy would see just how powerful Earth truly was. The first of the dreadnoughts began to launch, one by one. They rose from Earth's surface, massive and unstoppable. Soon, a fleet of 500,000 dreadnoughts would be on its way, heading directly for the Empire. The galaxy watched in stunned silence as the ships flew into the void of space, their engines blazing with fury. The message was clear. The Empire had made a terrible mistake, and Earth was coming to make them pay. The countdown to the Empire's reckoning had begun. Earth's unstoppable response. The galaxy was stunned. News of the mass launch of Earth's dreadnoughts spread like wildfire through every star system. For centuries, the Empire had ruled with an iron fist, crushing all who dared oppose them. They had underestimated humanity for far too long, and now they were about to witness a power unlike anything they had ever faced. The vast armada of 500,000 dreadnoughts, each one a colossal war machine, shot through space at unimaginable speeds. The engines of the ships burned a brilliant orange, leaving a trail of fire and destruction in their wake. Each dreadnought was equipped with advanced weaponry capable of obliterating entire fleets in a single volley. The size and power of these ships were beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. On Earth, the people watched with bated breath as their ships ventured into the unknown. The reaction was a mixture of fear, hope, and a desire for justice. For the first time in history, humanity had come together with a single purpose: to seek revenge for the senseless death of one innocent child. The loss of Maya had sparked a fire in the hearts of the human race, a fire that would not be extinguished until justice was served. The dreadnoughts were led by the most experienced and battle-hardened commanders humanity had to offer. Among them was Admiral Sarah Hawkey, a fierce strategist known for her unflinching resolve. She had lost family in past conflicts, and now, with the Empire's actions, it was personal. For Hawk, this wasn't just a mission, it was a chance to protect humanity's future. As the ships sped through space, the weight of the mission began to settle on the crew. Each dreadnought was manned by thousands of soldiers, engineers, and officers, all determined to carry out their orders. The mission was simple: reach the Empire's strongholds and make them pay. There was no room for mercy, no space for second thoughts. This was the beginning of an all-out war, and humanity wasn't going to back down. But the Empire had its own forces. Their fleets were vast, spanning the galaxy with countless ships and well-trained soldiers. They had ruled the stars for centuries and had wiped out countless civilizations in their quest for dominance. The dreadnoughts might be powerful, but the Empire was not going to surrender easily. They would fight back with everything they had. The Empire's leaders, meanwhile, were stunned. They had never considered humanity a serious threat. They had viewed Earth as a minor colony, a backwater planet with no real military strength. The death of one child, though tragic, was not supposed to be a turning point. But now, with 500,000 dreadnoughts heading straight toward their heart, the Empire knew they had made a terrible mistake. In the Imperial Command Center, the high-ranking officers scrambled to devise a strategy. They had sent entire fleets to crush minor uprisings before, but they had never faced a force of this magnitude. The Empire's ships were formidable, but they were not prepared for the sheer scale and ferocity of humanity's retaliation. Despite their shock, the Empire quickly shifted into high gear. They began to marshal their resources, preparing for what would undoubtedly be the biggest battle the galaxy had ever seen. The Empire was not about to let one human colony bring them to their knees. They would fight to maintain their rule, no matter the cost. The first encounter between the dreadnoughts and the Empire's forces came on the edge of a barren star system. The Empire's fleet, a mixture of warships, cruisers, and battle stations, stood ready to defend their territory. The dreadnoughts, led by Admiral Hawkey, came out of hyperspace, their massive forms looming in the distance. The two fleets were like titans facing off. The Empire's ships were sleek and fast, but the dreadnoughts were sheer power incarnate. As the two forces moved closer, the tension was palpable. The fate of the galaxy would be decided in this one battle. Earth's vengeance was at hand, and the Empire could no longer hide from the consequences of their actions. The first shots were fired as the dreadnoughts unleashed their devastating firepower. Lasers and missiles shot through the void, hitting Empire ships with pinpoint precision. The sheer force of the barrage was enough to shake the stars themselves. Explosions ripped through the Empire's fleet, sending debris scattering in every direction. But the Empire wasn't backing down. Their ships retaliated with equal ferocity, launching waves of missiles and energy blasts. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides taking heavy losses. The dreadnoughts' massive shields absorbed the majority of the incoming fire, but even they were not invincible. The Empire's ships were skilled at evasion, using their speed to dodge the more powerful shots. Admiral Hawk stood on the bridge of the flagship, her eyes scanning the battle unfolding on the view screen. She knew this was just the beginning. The Empire had underestimated humanity before, and now they were learning the hard way that Earth was not to be trifled with. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Empire had no chance of victory if they didn't change their tactics. The dreadnoughts were relentless, each ship carrying a crew willing to fight to the death. Earth's response to the death of one child had grown into a galactic challenge, a challenge the Empire could no longer ignore. With each passing minute, the Empire's grip on the galaxy began to weaken. The dreadnoughts were closing in on their territory, and there was no turning back. The galaxy would witness something they had never seen before, humanity's true strength, unleashed in a way that could never be forgotten. The Empire had made a grave mistake, and now they were facing the consequences. Humanity had awakened, and it was clear that this was a fight the Empire could not win. The Empire strikes back. The battle had only just begun, and the galaxy was already witnessing the true power of humanity's vengeance. Earth's 500,000 dreadnoughts had made their presence felt, and the Empire was now scrambling to counter this unexpected threat. The first skirmish was merely a taste of what was to come. As the smoke of battle cleared, the remnants of the Empire's fleet drifted through the void, their damaged ships limping away to regroup. But the dreadnoughts were relentless. They pursued, hunting down the surviving ships with a precision and speed that stunned the Empire's commanders. The advantage was clear. Earth's fleet was larger, stronger, and more unified than anything the Empire had ever faced before. Admiral Hawk stood resolute on the command bridge of the flagship Vigilance. Her eyes were fixed on the holographic display, showing the ongoing battle. The Empire's forces, though still formidable, were faltering. Their fleet had never encountered anything like the dreadnoughts. The ship's heavy armor and advanced weapon systems were overwhelming, and the Empire's fleet was slowly being driven back. Yet, even as the battle seemed to turn in humanity's favor, the Empire was far from finished. The Imperial High Command had made a crucial decision. They would not allow Earth's retaliation to go unanswered. The threat posed by the 500,000 dreadnoughts was too great to ignore. The Emperor, a ruthless and calculating figure, ordered a massive counter-offensive. The Empire's remaining forces, regrouping after their initial losses, were reinforced with reinforcements from all corners of the galaxy. Thousands of new warships emerged from hidden shipyards, ready to face the overwhelming dreadnoughts. A new fleet of advanced battlecruisers, each capable of decimating entire fleets, was now at the Empire's disposal. Their new weapon, the Devastator cannons, supercharged energy weapons designed to pierce even the thickest armor of the dreadnoughts. On Earth, the command center was filled with anxious energy. The victory from the first clash had bolstered humanity's resolve, but they knew the battle was far from over. The Empire had a terrifying ability to adapt. The new fleet was not to be taken lightly. It was only a matter of time before the true extent of the Empire's power would be revealed. Admiral Hawke turned to her officers. "Prepare for the worst. They've sent in reinforcements, but we've only just begun. Stay vigilant." The crew nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had just witnessed how easily the Empire could pull resources from every corner of the galaxy. Earth's fleet may have been enormous, but the Empire had no shortage of warships. Their forces were vast, and their tactics had been honed over centuries of war. The dreadnoughts, though powerful, were not invincible. Meanwhile, deep within the heart of the Empire's war council, the Emperor and his generals gathered to plan their next move. They could feel the tension mounting in every corner of the galaxy. The dreadnoughts were not like any foe they had ever faced. They were like a storm, unstoppable, relentless, and angry. One of the Emperor's advisors, a cold-hearted strategist named Zorin, spoke up. "We've underestimated humanity, but now we must strike decisively. We must break their resolve before the dreadnoughts crush us all." The Emperor, his face hidden behind a mask of anger and calculation, nodded. "Do it. Use the Devastator cannons. I want those ships shattered before they can reach our core worlds." The decision was made. The Empire's counterattack would be swift and brutal. The Devastator cannons were the Empire's trump card, capable of turning the tide of battle in their favor. But the Emperor knew that even with these advanced weapons, humanity would not go down without a fight. The dreadnoughts were proof of that. As the Empire mobilized for their final assault, Earth's fleet continued to press forward, pushing deeper into Imperial territory. The battle raged across the stars, each side taking heavy losses. The dreadnoughts were formidable, but so too were the Empire's new ships. The war had escalated from a skirmish into a full-scale conflict that threatened to engulf the entire galaxy. In the middle of the chaos, Admiral Hawke remained calm. She knew the stakes had risen. The first clash had been just the beginning, and now it was time to show the Empire that humanity would never back down. She had seen the courage in her crew's eyes. These were not just soldiers. They were the last line of defense for Earth and all of humanity. Every one of them had a story, a reason to fight, and they would carry that into the heart of the Empire's defenses. Back on Earth, the situation was grim. News of the growing war had spread like wildfire. People were no longer just watching from the sidelines. They were preparing for the possibility of Earth's destruction. Civilian leaders met with military commanders, and every human, whether soldier or scientist, felt the weight of the impending war. The stakes had never been higher, but there was a glimmer of hope. The dreadnoughts were humanity's response, a symbol of their unwavering resolve. They were more than just ships, they were a testament to the strength of the human spirit. The Empire had made the mistake of killing one child. They had no idea what they had unleashed. And so, the battle raged on. The Empire had made its move, and now humanity would show them what happens when you challenge Earth. The next move would decide everything. Would the dreadnoughts prove to be enough to bring the Empire to its knees, or would the Empire's new weapon tear humanity's hopes apart? The galaxy was holding its breath, waiting for the answer. The fate of the universe now rested in the hands of Earth's finest. The Devastator cannon's fury. The tension in the galaxy was palpable as Earth's fleet of 500,000 dreadnoughts continued their relentless march towards the heart of the Empire's territory. After the Empire's initial strikes, the stage was set for a fierce confrontation. Admiral Hawke knew that the next move was crucial. The Empire had sent its reinforcements, and with the newly developed Devastator cannons, they were ready to make their final stand. Deep in the command center of Earth's flagship Vigilance, Admiral Hawke gathered her officers for a critical briefing. The atmosphere was heavy, each person aware that the battle to come would decide the fate of humanity. On the holographic map displayed before them, the silhouettes of the Empire's warships loomed menacingly as they formed a formidable blockade. The Empire had consolidated its forces in a last-ditch attempt to stop Earth's dreadnoughts from advancing. Prepare yourselves. The Empire is bringing its most powerful weapons to bear. Admiral Hawke's voice was steady, but there was a clear resolve in her eyes. She turned to her tactical officer. "What's the status on the enemy fleet?" The officer looked up from his console. "Admiral, we're detecting multiple energy spikes in the Empire's fleet. It looks like they're charging their Devastator cannons. If those weapons fire at full strength, they could tear through our dreadnoughts in seconds." The room went silent for a moment. The Devastator cannons were the Empire's most feared weapon, an advanced energy weapon capable of penetrating even the thickest of armor. If they hit their targets, the consequences would be catastrophic. But the dreadnoughts were not helpless. They had been designed with advanced shielding systems, and their firepower was unparalleled. They had the strength to take on the Empire's most advanced technologies, but it would be a test of endurance. Hawke's mind raced as she looked over the tactical display. The Empire's new fleet of battlecruisers and their devastating weaponry were now the primary threat. The question was not whether the dreadnoughts could withstand the onslaught, it was whether they could get close enough to deliver a fatal blow. "Let's test their resolve," Hawke said, a fire igniting in her voice. "Send the dreadnoughts forward, but we're not just going to sit back and wait for them to fire first. We've got one shot at this, and we'll make it count." The battle began to unfold in front of their eyes. The dreadnoughts moved forward as one, a mighty fleet of humanity's finest ships, their guns charged and ready. The Empire responded immediately, launching a barrage of missiles and energy blasts, but the dreadnoughts' advanced shields absorbed much of the impact. Yet, the Devastator cannons were still charging. ASA, the distance between the two fleets closed. The Empire's fleet began to fire. Huge bolts of energy streaked across the sky, tearing through space as they bore down on the approaching dreadnoughts. It was the moment everyone feared, the first test of the Devastator cannons in action. Admiral Hawke watched through the view screen, her heart pounding. The first shot was fired, and it slammed into one of the dreadnoughts, sending ripples of energy through its hull. For a brief moment, it seemed as if the dreadnought might be finished. But then, the ship's reinforced hull began to repair itself, its internal systems adjusting to the damage. The dreadnought roared back into action, its weapons now targeting the Empire's battlecruisers. "We're not going down that easy," Hawke muttered, determination in her eyes. The Empire had underestimated Earth's fleet, but this was no time to take chances. They had to close the gap and destroy the Empire's power once and for all. The battle escalated. The dreadnoughts retaliated, unleashing their own firepower. Massive railguns and energy beams cut through the Empire's ships, creating explosions that sent debris flying in all directions. The Empire's fleet was reeling, and Hawke knew they had to push forward. "Target their lead battlecruiser," she ordered. "Take it down. We need to cripple their command structure." The dreadnoughts shifted into formation, focusing their firepower on the heart of the Empire's fleet. The battle was now a full-scale war, two massive fleets locked in a brutal contest for control of the galaxy. On the Empire's flagship, the Emperor watched in silence as his fleet engaged with Earth's forces. His advisors stood by, waiting for his orders, but he remained unmoved. Despite the losses his fleet had suffered, he knew that Earth's dreadnoughts would not be enough to stop him. The Empire had the advantage, and the Devastator cannons would soon turn the tide. But even as the Empire launched its next devastating barrage, Hawke's voice cut through the chaos. "Activate the countermeasures," she commanded. Suddenly, the dreadnought's shields flared to life, glowing brighter than ever before. They had adapted. The energy blasts from the Devastator cannons hit the shields with an intense force, but the new countermeasures absorbed the energy, redirecting it back into the fleet's weapons systems. The enemy was stunned. The Empire's battlecruisers faltered as their powerful weapons did not have the desired effect. The dreadnoughts were fighting back with an unprecedented strength. It was clear that humanity's resolve had shaken the Empire's confidence. On the battlefield, Explosions rang out as the dreadnoughts advanced further, overwhelming the Empire's defenses. The Empire had underestimated humanity once again. The Devastator cannons had been their last hope, but Earth's countermeasures had neutralized their power. ASA. The battle raged on. Admiral Hawk knew that the Empire was growing desperate. They had thrown everything at Earth's fleet, and yet the dreadnoughts continued to press forward. Humanity's vengeance was becoming a reality, and the Empire was starting to feel the weight of their brutal mistake. But there was no time to celebrate. The next phase of the battle was upon them. Would Earth's dreadnoughts be enough to crush the Empire's resolve, once and for all? Or would the Empire's forces rally and unleash a devastating final counterattack? The answer would come soon. The fate of the galaxy was hanging in the balance, and the final showdown between the two empires was about to begin. The last stand of the Empire. As the battle raged on, the fate of the galaxy rested in the hands of Earth's dreadnoughts. The once unstoppable Empire was now reeling from the devastation caused by humanity's relentless assault. The massive fleet of 500,000 dreadnoughts pressed forward, their weapons blazing, their shields holding strong against the Empire's retaliatory strikes. It was a sight unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, an unyielding force of nature, forged from the will of a people seeking justice. But the Empire wasn't ready to surrender. On board the Emperor's flagship, the Majestic, the mood was somber, yet there was a glint of defiance in the Emperor's eyes. His fleet was in disarray, many of his elite battlecruisers already destroyed or heavily damaged. His own commanders were struggling to keep the remaining ships in line. Despite the massive losses, the Emperor had one final card to play, his ultimate weapon. "Prepare the Ascendant ship," the Emperor ordered coldly, his voice barely rising above a whisper. "It's time to show them the true power of the Empire." The Ascendant ship was a massive, ancient warship, hidden in the deepest recesses of the Empire's fleet. It was the Empire's last resort, a weapon capable of decimating entire fleets in one fell swoop. Unlike the Devastator cannons, the Ascendant ship didn't rely on energy. Instead, it used a deadly new form of technology, a quantum destabilizer. This weapon could rip apart the fabric of space itself, creating a singularity that would devour anything within its range. The Majestic shifted course, sending the Ascendant ship to the front lines. Meanwhile, Admiral Hawk watched the battle unfold from her command center aboard the Vigilance. She could see the Empire's fleet was weakening, but she also knew that the final phase of the battle was imminent. She could feel the tension in the air, thick with anticipation. The Vigilance had been at the heart of the conflict from the beginning, and she understood that the next few minutes would determine everything. "Captain, any updates from the enemy?" Hawk asked, her eyes narrowed as she studied the enemy fleet on the tactical display. "Admiral, we've detected a massive energy signature coming from the Empire's flagship." "It's the Ascendant ship," the captain replied, his voice tense. "It's charging up its quantum destabilizer." Hawk's heart skipped a beat. The quantum destabilizer was unlike any weapon humanity had ever encountered. If it fired, it would tear a hole in space and destroy everything in its vicinity, including the dreadnoughts. The very thought of facing such a weapon sent a shiver down her spine, but she had no time to hesitate. The Empire had made their move, and it was up to her to stop them. "Redirect all power to the shields. Prepare the counterattack," she ordered, her voice steady despite the tension building within her. "We have no choice. If we don't destroy that ship, all will be lost." As the dreadnoughts closed in on the Empire's position, a deep rumble shook the Vigilance. The Ascendant ship fired. The quantum destabilizer pulsed with a terrifying energy, sending ripples of distortion through space. A swirling vortex of energy appeared, its edges glowing with an unnatural light. The immense power radiated outward, and for a moment, the universe seemed to hold its breath. The Vigilance shook violently as the destabilizer's power reached its peak. Earth's fleet's shields flared bright, the energy crackling as the dreadnoughts fought to absorb the force of the attack. Hawk gritted her teeth as she watched the massive vortex of destructive energy inch closer toward them. "Brace for impact," she shouted, but there was no time to prepare. The shockwave from the destabilizer hit the dreadnoughts like a tidal wave, slamming into their shields with devastating force. It was as if time itself had stopped. The dreadnoughts rocked violently, their massive frames groaning under the pressure. Shields flared and flickered as the destabilizer's energy battered them. Some of the dreadnoughts buckled under the strain, their hulls cracked and damaged. But despite the overwhelming power of the weapon, the fleet held. The countermeasures they had developed over the years had protected them, though at great cost. The Vigilance shook harder than ever, the display screens flashing warning signs. Systems were failing, and it felt like the whole ship might tear apart. But Admiral Hawk's eyes remained locked on the tactical display. She saw the singularity flickering, and she knew it was not the end, not yet. "Deploy the strike force," she ordered. "It's now or never." The dreadnoughts rallied. Though the destabilizer's blast had knocked out some of their systems, Earth's fleet was still operational. With a renewed sense of urgency, they surged forward, their weapons charging once more. The remaining Empire ships were still trying to recover from the shockwave, their shields flickering as they attempted to regain control. The dreadnoughts opened fire, their massive guns unleashing a torrent of energy. The Empire's remaining battlecruisers were torn apart as the dreadnoughts relentlessly advanced. It wasn't just a battle, now it was humanity's declaration of vengeance. The Ascendant ship fired again, but this time, the dreadnoughts had adapted. Earth's fleet had learned from the Empire's attacks, and now had the technology to neutralize their most deadly weapon. The shields absorbed the destabilizer's blast once again, and the Empire's ship was forced to retreat, unable to maintain its devastating assault. But the Empire wasn't finished. The remaining forces regrouped for one final push, hoping to turn the tide. They knew it was their last chance. And so, the galaxy watched as the final confrontation unfolded. The fate of Earth's fleet, the Empire, and the galaxy itself rested on this one decisive moment. Would the dreadnoughts crush the Empire's last hope? Or would the Empire rally and unleash one final devastating counterattack? The final confrontation. The battlefield was chaotic. The Empire's fleet, battered and broken, had retreated to regroup around its last bastion, the Ascendant ship. Earth's dreadnoughts were relentless, still pushing forward, despite the enormous losses they had sustained. The massive fleet of 500,000 battleships loomed over the remnants of the Empire's forces, their engines burning with an unyielding fury. Yet, the final battle was far from over. Admiral Hawk stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, eyes focused, her mind working through 1,000 scenarios. The enemy was desperate, but they were not without resources. The Empire's Ascendant ship had survived the initial attacks and was preparing for another devastating strike. But this time, the Empire's tactics were different. They had one final card to play, a desperate, last-ditch effort to regain control. The display in front of her flickered, showing a digital map of the battlefield. The Ascendant ship had begun to charge its quantum destabilizer once again, and the pulse of energy building up around it was becoming impossible to ignore. "We can't let them fire that weapon again," Hawk said firmly, turning toward her tactical officer. "Prepare all ships for a full offensive. We have one shot at this." The tension in the air was palpable. The dreadnoughts, though severely damaged, were still a powerful force, each ship brimming with humanity's will to survive. Earth had already sent a message to the galaxy. No one would stand by, while the Empire took what they desired. They would not back down, not after everything they had fought for. The dreadnoughts were humanity's final defense, and they would not fail. "Admiral," the communications officer said, his voice tight with urgency, "we're receiving a transmission from the Emperor's flagship. It's a direct message to you. Hawk narrowed her eyes. The Empire was trying to negotiate, or perhaps this was another trick. But whatever it was, they had to act fast. Put it through, she ordered. The screen flickered, and the cold, commanding face of the Emperor appeared. His eyes were cold, calculating, but there was an unmistakable hint of desperation in his voice as he spoke. "Admiral Hawk," the Emperor said, "you have no idea what you're up against. The Ascendant ship is the last of its kind. With it, the Empire will crush your fleet. I urge you to surrender before more lives are lost. The war is already over for you." Hawk's heart pounded as she looked at the face of the Emperor, but her resolve only strengthened. She had seen the cost of this war, watched it unfold before her very eyes, and there was no way she would let it end like this. The Emperor's words were hollow, designed to break her spirit, but they only fueled her determination. "The war is not over," Hawk replied calmly, her voice steady. "And you will learn that humanity never surrenders. We fight until the end." She cut the transmission before the Emperor could respond and turned to her crew, her voice resolute. "All dreadnoughts charge forward. We make our final stand now." The dreadnoughts surged forward, breaking through the remnants of the Empire's defenses. Their weapons fired in perfect synchronization, each blast calculated and precise. But the Ascendant ship was ready. The quantum destabilizer powered up once more, its energy field expanding and contracting in preparation for the next blast. The Empire was preparing to end it all with one final shot. But Hawk had anticipated this. She knew the Empire's weapon was powerful, but its range was limited. It could only reach so far before it collapsed under its own weight, and Earth's fleet had figured out how to turn that weakness into an advantage. "Deploy the EMP charge," Hawk ordered, her voice cutting through the tension. The dreadnought's largest ship, the Defiant, launched a massive electromagnetic pulse into the heart of the battlefield. The pulse was a direct hit to the Empire's command systems, disrupting their shields and weaponry. The Ascendant ship's destabilizer sputtered, its energy faltering as the pulse overloaded its power core. The Emperor's last hope was crumbling before his eyes. Panic set in among the Empire's ranks. They had no more tricks up their sleeve. "Now's our chance," Hawk shouted. The dreadnoughts unleashed a concentrated barrage of fire on the Ascendant ship. The massive warship's shields collapsed under the relentless assault, and the first of its enormous cannons exploded in a flash of light. The Vigilance joined the fight, her own weapons firing in unison with the dreadnoughts, delivering a final blow that shattered the Ascendant ship's core. The echoes of victory. In the aftermath of the battle, the galaxy was quiet, as though the stars themselves were holding their breath. The silence was deafening. Admiral Hawk stood on the bridge of the Vigilance, her eyes staring out at the wreckage of the Empire's forces. The once mighty fleet had been reduced to nothing more than floating debris. The Ascendant ship, which had been the symbol of the Empire's might, was now little more than shattered metal, drifting aimlessly through the void. The enemy was broken, but the cost of this victory was high. "We've won," Hawk murmured, her voice distant. The words felt hollow after everything they had been through. The loss of countless ships, the brave souls who had fought and died, the memories of the lives that had been sacrificed to bring the Empire to its knees, it all weighed heavily on her. The dreadnoughts had emerged victorious, but at what cost? The damage to the fleet was staggering. Hulls were punctured, weapon systems had been crippled, and many of the ships would never fly again. But the dreadnoughts were still intact, still a symbol of Earth's resilience. And though the battle was over, the war was far from finished. The message had been sent, but the galaxy would not forget how humanity had risen from the ashes of destruction. "Status report," Hawk said, turning away from the view. Her voice was firm, but there was a trace of exhaustion in it. The communications officer turned toward her, his expression serious. "The Empire's remaining forces are retreating beyond the core systems. Their command structure is in disarray. It's unclear how many ships are left, but their morale is shattered. Good, Hawk replied. Let them retreat. Let them feel the weight of their failure. She took a deep breath, feeling the weight of leadership pressing down on her. The battle was over, but their mission was not. Earth had struck a blow to the Empire, but their enemies would not simply disappear. The war was won, but there would be more battles to come. The galaxy would not forgive Earth's defiance so easily. The tactical officer spoke up next, his voice strained but hopeful. Admiral, there's something else. A fleet from the Outer Rim is approaching. We think it's a relief force, coming to assist in the rebuilding efforts. Hawk's brow furrowed. Relief force. She had expected nothing less than contempt from the galaxy. Humanity had taken a stand and won, but she had no illusions about the reactions of other powers. Who are they? Hawk asked, her voice steady but cautious. They're unidentified for now. But they've been transmitting a peace signal, the officer replied, confusion in his voice. It's unexpected. Hawk's eyes narrowed. The galaxy's response to Earth's victory was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Humanity was no longer the underdog. They had proven themselves in the face of overwhelming odds, and now they were a force to be reckoned with. Put them through, Hawk ordered, a spark of curiosity lighting her eyes. If the galaxy was ready to offer peace, it would be humanity's choice whether to accept it or not. The screen flickered, and a face appeared on the display. It was a humanoid figure, garbed in the regal uniform of a military leader. Their features were alien, but their eyes held a strange glint of respect. Admiral Hawkeye, I am High Commander Vale, of the Coalition of Free Systems, the figure said, their voice clear and measured. We have witnessed your victory. We come not to challenge, but to offer an alliance. The Empire is broken, and we recognize the strength that Earth has shown. We would like to discuss terms of cooperation. Hawk's mind raced. An alliance? After all that had transpired, humanity's victory had changed the game. Earth had proven itself capable of holding its own, and now the galaxy was starting to take notice. This was not just a victory for Earth, it was a turning point for the entire galaxy. They had shaken the foundations of the old order, and now they were in a position to shape the future. We're listening, Hawk replied, her voice calm but filled with an unspoken challenge. Humanity had fought hard for this moment. If the galaxy wanted to talk, they would do so on humanity's terms. Commander Vale's lips curved into a slight smile, though the respect in their eyes remained. We are not the only ones who have seen the potential in Earth. There are others who will join us. Together, we can rebuild a new order, one based on cooperation, not conquest. Hawk listened carefully, weighing the words. She had seen enough of the galaxy to know that cooperation often came with strings attached. But Earth had earned its place. It had fought for survival, and now it could choose its allies. We'll discuss terms, Hawk said, but know this humanity will not be subjugated again. We've learned the cost of freedom, and we will protect it at all costs. The communication cut off, and the screen returned to its normal view. The silence on the bridge was heavy, as if everyone was waiting for Hawk to say something. We've changed the course of history, she said quietly, more to herself than to anyone else. Now it's up to us to decide where we go from here. The crew exchanged glances, knowing that this victory was only the beginning. Humanity had earned its place in the galaxy, but it was just one step in the journey ahead. The real question now was not whether Earth could survive, but whether it could thrive in the galaxy that had watched it rise from the ashes. Admiral Hawk looked out at the stars once more, her heart heavy with the weight of what they had lost, but also full of hope for what they could achieve. The war had ended, but the future was just beginning, and Earth would not be forgotten. The galaxy in ruins. The galaxy was no longer the thriving hub it once was. What used to be the heart of interstellar civilizations, the grand galactic capital of Lyran Prime, now stood in eerie silence, its skies choked with black smoke. Crumbling towers and shattered domes whispered stories of destruction. The streets, once filled with laughter and life, were littered with debris, echoing only with the distant cries of the survivors. At the heart of the ruins, the United Galactic Alliance Council gathered in a secret underground chamber. The council members, representatives of the galaxy's most powerful species, sat around a dimly lit table. Each face carried the weight of despair. The enemy they faced, the Drethons, seemed unstoppable. The Drethons were unlike anything the galaxy had ever encountered. Towering insectoid creatures with exoskeletons harder than any known alloy, they moved with precision and purpose. Their ships, sharp and angular, cut through fleets like blades through air. Planets that resisted them were scorched to ash, their populations eradicated without mercy. Councillor Darvek, a tall, spindly being from the Kaldor race, slammed his hand on the table. His voice trembled, not with anger, but with fear. We cannot hold them off any longer. Another 20 systems fell this week. Our fleets are scattered, our armies are in retreat, and our people, his voice broke. Our people are being slaughtered. Zara Vox, a young but determined general from the Avronian species, stood up. Her blue skin shimmered under the chamber's flickering lights. "Then we must use the last option," she said firmly. The room went silent. Every council member turned to her, their expressions shifting from despair to disbelief. "You don't mean," began Councillor Greel, a stout, fur-covered being from the Exarn. "Yes," Zara interrupted. "The humans." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The humans were a name out of legend, a species that had once dominated the galaxy through sheer willpower and unmatched ingenuity. But they were also feared for their ruthlessness. 4,000 years ago, after a series of devastating wars, they had vanished. Some said they had gone extinct, others believed they had retreated to the darkest corners of the universe. Councillor Elthra, an elder of the Crystalline Valia, shook her head. "We swore an oath never to contact them again. They were too dangerous, too unpredictable. Do you not remember the devastation they caused?" Zara's gaze was unwavering. "And do you not see the devastation we face now? The Drethons are worse than anything we've encountered. If we don't act, there will be no galaxy left to protect." "But what if they turn on us?" Darvek asked, his voice low. Zara leaned forward, her voice steely. "What choice do we have?" The council fell into a tense silence. The weight of the decision pressed heavily on them. Zara knew they wouldn't agree easily, so she took matters into her own hands. Unknown to the council, she had already sent a distress signal to the last known human coordinates. It was a gamble, a desperate act, but one she believed in. Far away, light years from the galactic capital, the signal reached its destination. Deep within an ancient, abandoned system, a silent sentinel stirred to life. It was a machine, vast and intelligent, built by humans before their disappearance. The sentinel, known as Vanguard, processed the signal. Its calculations were swift, and its conclusion was clear: humanity was needed once again. Vanguard initiated a sequence that had been dormant for millennia. Across the galaxy, hidden human outposts began to stir. Massive fleets, buried under planets or cloaked in the shadows of moons, started to awaken. Sleepers, human warriors preserved in cryopods, were brought back to life. In one of these outposts, Admiral Elias Kane opened his eyes. The last thing he remembered was leading humanity's fleets into their final war. Now, as he stood in a dimly lit chamber, surrounded by his awakening crew, he felt a familiar determination rise within him. A holographic display lit up before him, showing the state of the galaxy. The Drethon threat was clear, as was the desperate plea from the Galactic Alliance. Kane's lips curled into a grim smile. "They need us again," he said, his voice rough but resolute. "Let's show them what humanity can do." As the first human dreadnoughts began to emerge from the shadows, the galaxy watched in stunned silence. The humans were back, the awakening of humanity. The Drethon fleet hovered over what was left of the Andor system, its black ships casting shadows over the smoldering remains of a once thriving planet. The Drethons were relentless, consuming all resistance in their path. Victory to them was inevitable. The galaxy, it seemed, had no answer to their overwhelming might. But deep in the uncharted corners of space, humanity stirred. Admiral Elias Kane stood on the bridge of the Eclipse, one of humanity's legendary dreadnoughts. The ship's sleek design, with its darkened hull and glowing crimson lines, seemed to hum with purpose. Around him, his crew was awakening from their cryosleep. Engineers, tacticians, and soldiers stretched their stiff muscles, their sharp minds already snapping back into action. "Status report," Kane ordered, his voice cutting through the low hum of the ship's systems. A young officer, Lieutenant Mira Voss, scanned her console. "Admiral, the cryocycle is complete for 87% of the fleet. All systems are operational, and the Vanguard AI reports that over 200 ships have successfully reactivated." Kane nodded. "And the galaxy?" Voss hesitated. "It's worse than we expected. The Drethons have taken over half of known space. The Galactic Alliance is on the brink of collapse." A grim silence fell over the bridge. For thousands of years, humanity had watched the galaxy from the shadows, preparing for the day they might be needed again. But no one had expected the galaxy to fall so far into chaos. Kane's second-in-command, Commander Ryan Cole, stepped forward. "Sir, the distress signal from the Alliance Council mentions the Drethons are heading toward Lyran Prime. If they fall, it's over for the Alliance." Kane's jaw tightened. The memories of humanity's last war flooded back countless battles fought, entire worlds lost, and the impossible decisions he had to make. And now, history seemed ready to repeat itself. "Set a course for Lyran Prime," Kane commanded. "If we're going to make an entrance, it might as well be one they'll never forget." Meanwhile, on Lyran Prime, Zara Vox stood on the balcony of the Alliance Council's bunker, watching the skies. The planet's defenses were being bolstered, but it wasn't enough. The Drethon fleet would arrive within hours, and she knew their forces wouldn't hold. "Any word on the humans?" Councillor Darvek asked, his voice heavy with doubt. Zara shook her head. "Not yet." Darvek sighed. "And if they don't come?" "They will," Zara said firmly, though her heart wavered. The air grew colder as night fell, and Zara's gaze lingered on the stars. Somewhere out there, humanity was awakening. She could only hope they were everything the legends claimed. In the darkness of space, the Eclipse and its fleet emerged from hyperspace. The sight was breathtaking. Dozens of massive warships, their engines burning bright, their weapons primed. Each ship bore the mark of humanity, resilience, ingenuity, and a touch of defiance. Kane stood at the bridge, his eyes scanning the holographic map. "We've intercepted Drethon communications. Their fleet is advancing on Lyran Prime with overwhelming numbers," Voss reported. "How long until we reach them?" Kane asked. 10 minutes, sir." Kane's lips curled into a confident smile. "Good. Let's remind the galaxy who we are." The fleet accelerated, their engines roaring like thunder in the void. As they neared Lyran Prime, the Drethon fleet came into view. The enemy ships were vast and menacing, their black hulls glinting with the eerie green light of their weapons. Kane's voice rang out over the comms. "This is Admiral Kane of the Terran fleet. To all human forces, engage at will. Show these invaders the power they've awakened." The human ships broke formation, their weapons unleashing a storm of energy. Lasers and missiles tore through the Drethon ranks, cutting down their ships with precision and ferocity. The Eclipse led the charge, its main cannon firing a beam so powerful it split an enemy cruiser in two. On the surface of Lyran Prime, Zara watched in awe as the sky lit up with fire. The humans had arrived, and they were unlike anything she had imagined. "General," a soldier called out, running toward her. "The humans are pushing back the Drethons." Zara's heart raced. For the first time in months, hope flickered within her. Above, Kane watched as the Drethon fleet began to retreat. "They weren't ready for us," he said, a hint of satisfaction in his voice. But deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The Drethons were powerful, and their true strength had yet to be revealed. "Prepare the fleet for pursuit," Kane ordered. "We're not just going to push them back, we're going to end this." As the human fleet advanced, the galaxy held its breath. Humanity was back, and the galaxy would never be the same. The Drethon counterstrike. The aftermath of the battle over Lyran Prime left the skies littered with debris from Drethon ships. Humanity's return had sent shockwaves across the galaxy. The Galactic Alliance hailed their victory, spreading hope to the remaining free worlds. Yet, Admiral Kane knew better than to celebrate too early. On board the Eclipse, the crew worked tirelessly, analyzing data from the battle. Admiral Kane stood at the command console, his gaze fixed on a holographic map of the galaxy. The Drethon fleet had retreated, but Kane could sense the storm brewing on the horizon. "Sir," Lieutenant Voss called out, her voice strained. "We've intercepted a Drethon transmission." "Play it," Kane ordered. The bridge fell silent as a guttural voice echoed through the speakers. It was unmistakably Drethon, its tone cold and menacing. To the Terran fleet, the voice snarled, "Your interference will not go unpunished. You may have won this skirmish, but you will not survive what comes next. Prepare for annihilation." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving a chilling stillness in the room. Commander Cole broke the silence. "They're regrouping. They'll come back stronger." Kane nodded. "That's exactly what I'm counting on." Cole raised an eyebrow. "You want them to attack us?" Kane smirked. "Not us, me. Send word to the fleet. I want the Eclipse to remain here while the rest of the ships move to the outer system. If the Drethons want to fight, we'll give them one, but on our terms." On the surface of Lyran Prime, Zara Vox gathered the remaining Alliance leaders. The humans had bought them time, but she knew it wouldn't last. "We can't rely solely on them," Councillor Darvek argued, pacing the room. "Their fleet is powerful, but the Drethons will retaliate with everything they have." Zara held her ground. "And what's your alternative? Surrender? The humans are our best chance to turn the tide. We need to trust them." Before anyone could respond, a soldier burst into the room. "Counselor, the Drethon fleet is regrouping. Our scouts report a massive force heading this way." The leaders exchanged uneasy glances. Zara clenched her fists. "Inform Admiral Kane. If the Drethons are coming, we need to be ready." Hours later, the Eclipse remained alone in orbit over Lyran Prime, its sleek hull casting a shadow over the planet. Inside, the crew prepared for what was coming. Engineers checked weapons systems, while pilots ran simulations of combat maneuvers. The tension was palpable, but so was the resolve. Kane stood in the war room with Commander Cole and Lieutenant Voss, analyzing the tactical display. "They'll come straight for us," Cole said, pointing to the projected approach. "They'll think we're vulnerable." "That's the plan," Kane replied. "We're going to draw them in close, then hit them with everything we've got. The rest of the fleet will jump back at the right moment and cut off their escape." "And if it doesn't work?" Voss asked cautiously. Kane's eyes hardened. "Then we make sure they remember why they feared us." The Drethon fleet arrived in a flash of green light, their ships larger and more imposing than before. At their center was a colossal dreadnought, bristling with weapons that glowed ominously. On board the Eclipse, alarms blared as the enemy fleet filled the sensors. Kane stepped onto the bridge, his presence commanding. "Enemy fleet detected," Voss reported. They outnumber us 10-1. Good, Kane said, taking his seat. Let them think we're cornered. The Drethons wasted no time. Their ships surged forward, firing beams of destructive energy. The Eclipse weaved through the onslaught, returning fire with pinpoint accuracy. Its weapons tore through smaller ships, but the Drethons kept advancing. Admiral, they're closing in. Voss warned. Kane's voice was calm. Hold position. Wait for my signal. The Eclipse endured the onslaught, its shields flickering under the strain. The Drethon dreadnought loomed closer, its massive cannons charging. Now, Kane commanded. In an instant, the Terran fleet emerged from hyperspace, surrounding the Drethons. The surprise attack caught them off guard. Human ships unleashed a barrage of firepower, cutting through the enemy lines. The Eclipse targeted the Drethon dreadnought, its main cannon charging with a hum that vibrated through the ship. Fire! Kane ordered. A blinding beam of energy erupted from the Eclipse, striking the enemy dreadnought with devastating force. The explosion lit up the void, and cheers erupted across the Terran fleet. The Drethon ships scattered, their once formidable force reduced to wreckage. On Lyran Prime, Zara watched the battle unfold through a holographic display. The sight of the human fleet's victory filled her with awe and gratitude. They did it, she whispered. But even as the Drethon threat faded, Kane knew the war was far from over. Humanity had proven their strength, but the galaxy still held many dangers, and the Drethons were only the beginning. Prepare for the next move, Kane said, his voice resolute. This is just the start. Whispers of betrayal. The Terran fleet's victory over the Drethons had sparked hope throughout the galaxy. Alliance members celebrated, but their joy was tempered by the realization that the war was far from over. Beneath the surface of this fragile unity, however, tension began to brew, tension that Admiral Kane had sensed but hoped to avoid. On board the Eclipse, the war room bustled with activity. Maps, holographic projections, and communication logs painted a chaotic but promising picture of the Terran fleet's progress. Yet Kane's attention was drawn to something more troubling, a report delivered by Lieutenant Voss. Admiral, she began cautiously, we've intercepted encrypted transmissions from one of the Alliance ships. It's being routed to a system under Drethon control. Kane's brow furrowed. A spy? Voss hesitated. It's possible. Whoever it is, they're using advanced encryption protocols. It'll take time to decode the full message. Kane's jaw tightened. Time is a luxury we don't have. Focus all resources on breaking that code. If there's a traitor among us, we need to know now. On the surface of Lyran Prime, Zara Vox moved through the corridors of the Alliance Command Center, her mind racing. News of the Drethon defeat had bolstered morale, but whispers of dissent among the Council worried her. Some members were growing uneasy about the Terrans' overwhelming strength. They're too powerful, Councillor Darvek had said during a heated discussion. What happens when the Drethons are gone? Will the humans turn their weapons on us? Zara had dismissed his concerns as paranoia, but now she wasn't so sure. Could there be truth to his fears? Her thoughts were interrupted by a message from the Alliance Security Chief. Councillor Vox, we've detected unauthorized communications from within our command center. It appears someone is leaking classified information. Her stomach sank. Can you trace it? Not yet, the chief admitted. But whoever it is, they're covering their tracks well. Meanwhile, the Eclipse floated in orbit, its crew unaware of the storm brewing around them. Kane stood at the bridge, his gaze fixed on the vast expanse of space. Commander Cole joined him, his expression grim. Voss thinks the transmission might have come from an Alliance ship, Cole said. If that's true, we could be walking into a trap. Kane's voice was steady. We always assumed the Drethons had infiltrators. The question is, how deep does it go? As they spoke, an urgent alert sounded. Voss's voice came through the comms. "Admiral, we've decoded part of the transmission. It contains coordinates, and they lead to a remote Alliance outpost near the Drethon border." Kane's eyes narrowed. "Prepare the fleet. We're heading there." The journey to the outpost was tense. The Terran fleet moved swiftly, but the possibility of betrayal loomed large. Kane briefed his officers on the mission. "This could be a trap," he said bluntly. "But if the Drethons are using this outpost to coordinate their attacks, we can't ignore it. Stay sharp and trust no one outside this room." When they arrived, the outpost appeared abandoned. The Eclipse dispatched a reconnaissance team, led by Commander Cole. The team moved cautiously through the facility, their weapons at the ready. The corridors were eerily silent, their footsteps echoing against the metal walls. "Something's not right," Cole muttered. They reached the command center, where a single console blinked with activity. As Cole approached, the console activated, displaying a holographic image of a Drethon officer. "Welcome, Terrans," the officer sneered. "We've been expecting you." Before Cole could react, alarms blared throughout the outpost. The facility shook violently as hidden explosives detonated. "Get out of here," Cole shouted, leading his team back to their shuttle. On the Eclipse, Kane watched in horror as the outpost erupted into flames. "Commander Cole's team is returning," Voss reported. "But we're detecting Drethon ships inbound." "Deploy all fighters," Kane ordered. "We're not leaving without them." The Terran fleet engaged the incoming Drethon ships in a fierce battle. Fighters weaved through the chaos, protecting the shuttles carrying Cole's team. As the last shuttle docked, Kane gave the command to jump to hyperspace. The fleet escaped, but the damage was done. Back on Lyran Prime, Zara confronted Counselor Darvek in private. Zara moved quickly. She confronted Darvek in his private quarters, her eyes blazing with fury. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" she demanded. Darvek didn't flinch. Instead, he smiled a cold, calculating expression. "I've ensured the survival of my people. Something you failed to do, Zara." "The Drethons won't spare us," Zara spat. "They'll destroy everyone, including you." Darvek leaned back, his confidence unshaken. "You think the humans will save us? They'll conquer us once the Drethons are gone. I've merely ensured we'll have a fighting chance." Zara's hand hovered near her communicator, ready to signal security. "You're a fool, Darvek. And now you'll pay the price." Before she could act, Darvek's guards entered the room, weapons drawn. "I think you'll find, Counselor, that I'm not so easily cornered." Meanwhile, the Terran fleet prepared for its next mission. Kane had no choice but to act on incomplete intelligence. The Drethons were gathering near a critical system, and every moment of hesitation brought them closer to overwhelming the Alliance. As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Kane addressed his crew. "We've been betrayed, but we're not beaten. Humanity has faced worse odds and emerged stronger. This is no different. Stay focused, stay vigilant, and remember, we are fighting for the survival of all." The crew's cheers echoed through the ship, a powerful reminder of their resilience. On Lyran Prime, Zara's situation had grown dire. Darvek's guards held her captive, but she refused to yield. Using a hidden communicator, she sent a distress signal to Kane, including evidence of Darvek's treachery. When Kane received the message, his course was clear. "Set a course for Lyran Prime," he ordered. "We're going to finish this." The Eclipse raced through hyperspace, its engines burning with purpose. As they neared Lyran Prime, Kane's resolve hardened. He knew this battle wasn't just against the Drethons, it was against the fear and division threatening to tear the Alliance apart. The final confrontation. The Eclipse arrived at Lyran Prime's orbit, its sleek hull gleaming against the backdrop of a dying star. Tension buzzed through the ship like an electric charge, each crew member focused on the task at hand. Admiral Kane stood on the command deck, his eyes fixed on the planet below. The time had come to end the chaos once and for all. Admiral, we're receiving a signal from Counselor Vox, Lieutenant Voss reported, her voice laced with urgency. She says she has critical information on Darvek's location. Kane's hand tightened on the railing. Put it through. Zara's face appeared on the holoscreen, her expression grim but resolute. Admiral, I have proof of Darvek's betrayal. He's hiding in a fortified bunker beneath the capital city, surrounded by loyalists. We need to move quickly before he has a chance to escape. Kane's jaw tightened. We'll drop into the atmosphere and move in fast. The Drethons are on the move, and Darvek's influence has to be removed before he can make his final move. Zara nodded. Be careful, Admiral. He's not just a politician, he's a dangerous man. Don't underestimate him. Kane turned to Commander Cole. Prepare the team. We'll need everything we have for this mission. As the eclipse descended into the planet's atmosphere, the crew made final preparations for the assault. Ground teams were outfitted with heavy armor and advanced weaponry. The tension on the ship was palpable. This wasn't just about defeating an enemy, it was about reclaiming trust in the face of betrayal. The drop pods were launched, and in moments, Kane and his elite strike team were hurtling toward the surface of Lyram Prime. Below, the capital city loomed, a mix of towering spires and ancient ruins. Darvek's fortress was hidden deep beneath the city, its location only known to a select few. As the pods slammed into the ground, the team disembarked with precision. The air was thick with dust, and the sound of distant explosions echoed in the distance. They moved quickly, knowing that every second was critical. Kane led the way, his heart racing, but his mind focused. He knew what was at stake. Not only the future of the Alliance, but the survival of every species within it. The Drethons were waiting, and Darvek's betrayal had set everything into motion. The team reached the entrance to the bunker, a heavily guarded complex nestled beneath the city's core. Kane signaled for the breach, and explosives were placed on the reinforced doors. The blast sent a shockwave through the ground, and the doors flew open. Inside, Darvek's loyalists were waiting. A firefight erupted immediately, and the sound of blaster fire filled the air. Kane's team pushed forward, determined to end this madness once and for all. Admiral, we've located Darvek's command center, Voss reported through the comms. It's at the heart of the complex, heavily fortified. Lead the way, Kane ordered. We're not stopping until this is over. As they advanced deeper into the heart of the bunker, the enemy resistance grew fiercer. Kane's team moved with deadly precision, but Darvek's loyalists were relentless. The strike team fought their way through hallway after hallway, each turn bringing them closer to their target. Finally, they reached the command center. The doors were sealed, and a force field buzzed ominously around the entry. Kane approached, his mind already working through the options. He had no time to waste. Voss, get the field down, Kane ordered. We're going in. Voss worked quickly, her fingers flying over the controls. With a flick of her wrist, the force field flickered and died. The doors slid open, revealing Darvek standing at the far end of the room, flanked by his most trusted guards. You think you've won, Kane? Darvek's voice was cold, filled with disdain. You're too late. The Drethons will take this system, and your precious alliance will fall. You've played right into my hands. Kane stepped forward, his voice steady and calm. No, Darvek. You've underestimated humanity. We're not here to fight for power. We're here to protect what's left of the galaxy. And you're the last thing standing in our way. Darvek's guards raised their weapons, but Kane's team was already in position. The battle was over before it began. Darvek, realizing his defeat, turned and fled, but there was no escape. Kane's team cornered him in the farthest corner of the room. It's over, Darvek, Kane said, his voice unwavering. Darvek looked up at Kane with a mixture of hatred and fear. You may have won this battle, Kane, but the Drethons will be back. And when they do, the galaxy will remember that you failed. As the Eclipse prepared to leave Lyran Prime, Kane stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Drethons were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. The galaxy wasn't just in peril because of external enemies. It was in danger because of the cracks within its own foundation. But Kane knew one thing: humanity would stand strong, no matter the cost. "We're not finished," he said to his crew, his voice filled with resolve. Not by a long shot. As the Eclipse prepared to leave Lyran Prime, Kane stood on the bridge, looking out at the stars. The battle was over, but the war was far from won. The Drethons were still out there, lurking in the shadows, waiting for their chance to strike. The galaxy wasn't just in peril because of external enemies. It was in danger because of the cracks within its own foundation. But Kane knew one thing: humanity would stand strong, no matter the cost. "We're not finished," he said to his crew, his voice filled with resolve. Not by a long shot. A new beginning. The Eclipse sailed through the vastness of space, leaving Lyran Prime behind. The stars around them were bright, but Kane couldn't help but feel the weight of what lay ahead. The galaxy had been shaken, and although the battle for Lyran Prime was over, the true test was just beginning. Admiral Kane stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. His crew moved around him, preparing for their next mission. But this time, things would be different. The galaxy had been left in ruins after the Drethons' last attack, and rebuilding would take time. The betrayal of Darvek had shaken the foundation of the Alliance, but it had also made something clear: humanity was not just a player in this galaxy anymore. They were a force to be reckoned with. The door to the bridge opened, and Zara entered, her steps light but purposeful. She had been by Kane's side throughout the mission, offering support and guidance when it was needed the most. "Admiral," she said, walking up to him, "the Drethons have retreated for now, but we both know they'll be back. What's our next move?" Kane looked at her, his face set in determination. "We rebuild. The Alliance may be fractured, but humanity won't just survive. We'll help rebuild, restore order, and show the galaxy what we're made of. The Drethons underestimated us, and now we've got the chance to prove them wrong." Zara nodded, her eyes glinting with newfound hope. "I believe we can do this, Admiral." Kane smiled slightly, though the smile didn't reach his eyes. There was too much at stake, and the work would be long and difficult. The Drethons weren't the only threat in the galaxy, but humanity had earned the respect of the other species with their courage and resolve. "Get the fleet ready for departure," Kane ordered. "We're heading back to the heart of the Alliance. It's time to rebuild." As the Eclipse made its way back to the heart of the galaxy, the crew reflected on what they had just accomplished. They had removed a dangerous traitor and struck a blow against the Drethons. But they had also learned something important: humanity was no longer just fighting to survive. They were fighting for something greater, a future where they weren't just pawns in a galactic game, but players with a stake in the outcome. Alongside Kane and Zara, the crew of the Eclipse was determined to protect the fragile peace that now existed. There was no going back to the old ways. The galaxy had been irrevocably changed, and humanity had been its anchor. But even as the fleet neared their destination, Kane's mind was already on the future. He knew the Drethons wouldn't stop with just one defeat. They would try again. The question was, would humanity be ready for whatever came next? The Eclipse arrived at the main fleet station of the Galactic Alliance, where leaders of different species were already assembling. Kane and his crew prepared for a new Chapter 1 that would require them to form alliances, make difficult choices, and restore what had been lost. As Kane walked into the briefing room, the representatives from other species greeted him with a mix of admiration and caution. The galaxy knew what humanity was capable of now. They were no longer seen as just survivors, but as the decisive factor in the balance of power. And with that respect came a responsibility that would weigh heavily on Kane's shoulders. He stood before them, ready to speak. We fought and bled to protect what's left of the galaxy. But this is just the beginning. We need to come together, not just for the war we won, but for the peace we need to build. The room was silent as the leaders of the other species listened. Kane's words had power. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. But with humanity leading the charge, he believed that the galaxy could be restored. The mission had been clear: fight for survival. But now, humanity's purpose had grown. They were fighting not just for survival, but for a future one, where they weren't just a small force in a vast galaxy, but one that could shape the course of history. The war against the Drethons may have ended, but the true challenge was only just beginning. But with humanity leading the charge, the galaxy would never be the same again. Kane turned to his crew and gave them one final command: let's get to work. As the fleet set its course toward rebuilding, the stars seemed a little brighter and the future a little more hopeful. But Kane knew that no matter how dark the galaxy might get, humanity would always be ready to rise again. The battle for the future had only just begun. And this time, humanity would be leading the way.